Musicians from Jamaica comes up with this beat, and I say, well, this is called reggae.
What is it? Yeah, 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 hey. What is it? Yeah.
Reggae, come do the reggae, 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 reggae.
These 15 reggae songs secretly built the world you live in. Music executives have tried to bury the real #1 for decades. I tracked down the forbidden studio session that reveals the true most influential track. Stick until the final ranking to hear the song that started it, all the one they say you should never play. It begins wherever the heartbeat is loudest. And on some nights, that pulse comes from a smoky Kingston dance hall where Frederick Toots Hibbert once stepped to the microphone with a song shaped by suffering. The number he carried out of prison, 5446 was my number, was never supposed to leave the walls that confined him. But Toots had a way of dragging truth into daylight. When he unleashed that defiant chant, the crowd felt an electricity.
Jesus, son, here in my mind, mystic taste the moonshine.
They could not name. They only knew that injustice now had a rhythm. And as the horns moved through the humid air, the rude boys in the back realized they were watching a man turn pain into prophecy. That night, reggae didn't just speak, it rebelled. But rebellion in Jamaica never belonged to one voice. Miles away from that charged moment, Michael Rose was cultivating a sound with Black Uhuru that didn't feel like any pulse the island had heard before. When Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and later Spongy Reggae, emerged with the deep rolling authority of Sly and Robbie behind them. Reggae shifted once again. Dub shadows swirled through the mix. Vocals echoed like distant spirit. And the bass behaved as if gravity itself had learned to skank. For many outside Jamaica, Black Uhuru would become a gateway not to reggae's past, but to its evolving future, a future that refused to sit still, a future shaped by hands that weren't afraid to meddle with tradition. Yet long before sonic experiments reshaped the genre, a boy named Bob Marley was weaving street philosophy into melodies that felt like scripture. In the maze of Trenchtown's zinc fences, where the nights were long and hopes were fragile, Marley crafted Trenchtown Rock. As both a celebration and a declaration. It was not a polished anthem. It was a shout from a yard where children drummed on buckets and elders carried decades of struggle in their bones. When Marley sang that one good thing about music line that would echo across continents, he wasn't offering poetry, he was offering survival. And the ghetto recognized itself in every syllable. They heard a man turning their burdens into something that could fly. But to understand how that voice became the roar heard around the world, one must jump, not walk, to a moment when Marley, after narrowly surviving an assassination attempt, landed in London with wounds still fresh and heart still burning. Exile sharpened his vision. In that foreign city, he formed a new anthem of deliverance titled Exodus. It was not just a track. It was migration, revolution, spiritual awakening delivered in rhythm form. Bob Marley was calling his people Jamaicans, Africans, the downtrodden everywhere to rise from bondage. The song marched instead of danced, pulsed instead of floated, and the world listened. Radios in Europe, Africa, America, all became altars where people gathered to witness the prophecy of a man refusing to bow to fear. But prophecy didn't only belong to Marley. Winston Rodney, known eternally as Burning Spear, carved out his own temple, one built on chanting, fire, and unwavering devotion to Marcus Garvey. When Spear released Marcus Garvey, the island heard not just a song but a sermon. Horns moaned like ancestral spirits. Drums rolled like thunder in the hills. And through the haze of that spiritual storm, Rodney's voice rose with a conviction that felt older than time. He wasn't merely singing about Garvey, he was resurrecting him. The message of Black pride, self-reliance, and liberation was reborn in a musical form capable of crossing oceans without a passport. People who had never read Garvey's speeches suddenly understood the urgency of his dream. Meanwhile, far from these heavy meditations, somewhere in the soft glow of a lover's rock dance, Gregory Isaacs was whispering salvation into the ears of the brokenhearted. Night Nurse was not a protest song, yet it carried its own kind of healing.
She's the one, the only remedy.
Isaacs, the cool ruler himself, didn't need to shout to move a crowd. His velvet voice slid across the bass line with the ease of moonlight sliding over water. Women clutched their chests. Men nodded solemnly, and DJs replayed the tune until the walls sweated. The song was sensual, yes, but beneath that sweetness lay a gentle ache, a longing for comfort in a world that offered little of it. Romance, too, had a place in reggae's house. But just when the world thought it understood the contours of the genre, the ground shifted. The year was 1985, and a young man named Wayne Smith walked into King Jammy's studio carrying a rhythm that had no business, upsetting an entire tradition. The Casio MT40 keyboard, with its inexpensive preset called Rock, should have been a toy. Instead, under Jammy's guidance, it became the backbone of Under Me Slang Tongue. The first fully digital reggae riddim, at a legendary sound clash. When the track exploded through the speakers, the audience froze for half a heartbeat and then erupted in hysteria. No drummer, no bass player, no live band, just raw digital fire. In that moment, dancehall was reborn, and the older guard felt the earth tilt beneath them. While digital revolution shook Kingston, across the Caribbean Sea, another wave was rising. UB40, a band from Birmingham, reimagined Neil Diamond's song into a sun-soaked version titled Red, Red Wine.
Just one thing makes me forget. Red, red wine, I love you right from the start.
They believed it was a Jamaican original, unaware of the pop DNA beneath it. When Ali Campbell's voice glided across the reggae arrangement, the song sailed into global consciousness, converting millions who had never once stepped into the genre's world. And though purists debated whether this was truly reggae, the effect was undeniable. The music had leaped borders once again. Yet even crossover hits couldn't overshadow the raw narrative power of The Harder They Come, voiced by Jimmy Cliff, for the film that carried the same name. Cliff's soaring performance told the world that reggae was not just rhythm, it was life, hardship, hunger, hope. The movie's protagonist fought a system designed to crush him, and Cliff's voice became the echo of every Jamaican whose dreams were bigger than their circumstances.
I'm gonna get my share now. What's mine?
When audiences worldwide saw Kingston's streets on the big screen for the first time, they finally understood that reggae wasn't playful island background noise. It was struggle painted with melody. But struggle has many faces, and none captured its quiet endurance, quite like Dennis Brown in Money in My Pocket. The Crown Prince of Reggae had a way of sounding both effortless and wounded, like a man who had tasted sorrow but refused to choke on it. His voice glided through the song with heartbreaking sincerity. Behind the sweetness, the lyrics carried the weight of empty pockets, failed love, and the unending challenge of survival. It wasn't a shout of protest nor a chant of liberation. It was the sigh of a man trying to make sense of life's contradictions. Still, the island was never content with one emotional tone. It carried many, shifting from fire to tenderness in a breath. No moment embodied that shift more beautifully than when Bob Marley stood before the crowd at London's Lyceum Theatre and transformed No Woman No Cry from a studio recording into a living prayer. The audience became a choir. The night became a sanctuary. Marley's voice trembled with compassion for the women of Trenchtown who kept families alive through impossible hardship. And his decision to credit his friend Vincent Ford, a man running a soup kitchen in the ghetto, turned music royalties into literal meals for the hungry. That generosity gave the song a holiness that outlived Marley's earthly years. If Marley gave reggae its wings, then the foundations beneath those wings came from countless unsung nights where musicians tinkered, experimented, and dared. Those experiments eventually led to Shabba Ranks stepping forward with Mr. Loverman, a track drenched in charisma and swagger. His gravel-toned delivery rode the rhythm with a confidence that could shake a room. The world, already leaning toward dancehall's pulse, embraced the seductive bravado. Suddenly, Jamaica's street-born cadences were blasting through MTV and global clubs, proving that the future was not only rhythmic but unapologetically bold. But the future held another twist, one carried by a son honoring a father. Damian Marley stepped into his own chapter with Welcome to Jamrock, a searing portrait of modern Kingston that refused to hide behind touristic fantasies. Where others painted the island as paradise, Damian painted truth, corruption, violence, inequality, survival. His voice cut through the sample of Ini Kamoza's classic like a blade forged in urgency. The song roared across continents, reminding the world that reggae could still speak uncomfortable truths, could still sting, could still demand change. That demand for change links back to the earliest flickers of reggae's birth, which ironically arose from experimentation rather than intention. Toots Hibbert, again finding himself on the edge of history, recorded Do the Reggae, unknowingly giving the genre its name. Before critics, scholars, or record executives could label the sound, Toots baptized it. The song carried a new rhythm, slower than ska, punchier than rocksteady, and undeniably alive. The world did not know it was witnessing the christening of a movement. But the movement knew. The movement also understood karma, which is why another Toots composition became a cultural proverb set to music. Pressure Drop whispered of justice with a grin sharper than any knife. When Toots declared that wrongdoing carries consequences, Jamaicans nodded in recognition. The track hid moral philosophy inside a groove that invited dancing hips and clenched fists all at once. It later gained global immortality through film exposure, but its true power existed long before cinema touched it. It pulsed in Jamaican streets as a warning wrapped in melody. As reggae's chapters multiplied, so did its reach. The genre learned to stretch through dub, through lovers, rock, through digital dancehall, through pop reggae hybrids, yet each evolution remained tethered to the island's heartbeat. And that heartbeat often belonged to young musicians searching for escape or enlightenment. Some found it in spirituality, others in rebellion, others in love, but all found it in rhythm. The rhythm echoed in community gatherings, in sound clashes, in backyard parties, in sweaty dance halls, in political marches. Each setting birthed its own heroes, and sometimes heroes came from unexpected corners of the diaspora. UB40, experimenting far from Jamaica's shores, carried reggae into households that had never heard a patois lyric before. Meanwhile, Burning Spear's Garvey-driven chants pulled listeners toward Africa's call. Dennis Brown soothed the broken. Gregory Isaacs seduced the lonely. Black Uhuru electrified the experimental. Shabba ignited the dance. Damien confronted the conscience. Toots carried the roots. All of them were threads in a tapestry woven from more than half a century of hope, resistance, joy, and pain. What makes reggae powerful is not that these songs exist, but that they converse with one another across time. Now, you know the real hierarchy. Which song's influence surprised you the most? Debate the true number one in the comments below. Follow for the next revelation of the music they never wanted you to rank.